regular council meeting of Wednesday, April 5th, 2023. Can I get a second? Councillor Johnson, thank you. Item 2, adoption of agenda. 2.1, recommendation that council adopts the agenda. Can I get a seconder? Councillor Rabble, thank you. All those in favor? I'm having a moment this evening. All those in favor of adopting the agenda? Unanimous and carried, thank you. My brain has to get into like meeting mode now, sorry guys. Item number 3, adoption of minutes. 3.1, recommendation that council adopts the minutes from the regular council meeting held on February 1st, 2023. Can I get a seconder? Councillor Rabble, thank you. Discussion? Councillor Wall?
So I just want to note that if we could move Councillor Rabble's points of order in the minutes for the previous meeting into the Northwinds delegation prior to myself leaving. It's
yeah, I'm just getting there. Hang on. For item number 2, the recommendation here, the delegation from Northwinds Wellness. Is that where you're looking?
That's where I'm looking. Just right in there. It's just in the wrong order. Councillor Rabble he made his points of order, and then I left. I was present for that.
Okay. All right. So can we accept with the minor change?
With the amendment, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Any other discussion? No? Okay. All those in favor of accepting the February 1st, 2023 meeting minutes, my goodness, with the slight amendment from Councillor Wall? All those in favor? Unanimous and carried. Thank you very much. Alrighty. Item number 4, introduction of late items, none. Public hearings, none. Delegation 6.1, recommendation.
The council hears delegation from Northern Development Initiative Trust. Joel and Felicia presenting.
Thank you. Alrighty. Oh, can I get a seconder? Thank you. Council, I know, I'm not in meeting mode yet. My brain is still in district mode. Okay. Hello, thank you. You can stand at our fancy podium there, as you see.
Awesome. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having us.
Yes, thank you so much for coming this evening. Well, maybe the laptop will work.
It'll work.
There we go.
Okay. Well, good evening. I'm Joel Mackay. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Northern Development. It's an absolute pleasure to be back in town. It's been a few years, and to really just provide a bit of a reintroduction of who NDIT is. We had a dinner conversation a couple months ago and thought it would be a good idea for us to come back up. I would be remiss if I did not introduce my colleague, our Director of Economic Development, Felicia McGee. Felicia is responsible for most of everything you're about to hear me talk about and sign her up for with regard to POOS. So
absolutely,
she will be the victim of your great economic development ideas.
Alrighty. One too many.
Okay. So the trust is 18 years old. It was set up by the province following the sale of BC Rail's assets with a mission to drive economic development throughout northern BC. We are an arm's length independent corporation of the province, but we are a public body. So we live somewhere between local government, the provincial government, and business, being a nonprofit corporation. But our primary modus operandi is to use our funds to stimulate development in all of the communities that we serve. We're a sustainable trust, so we do not receive tax dollars. We only ever received one infusion of money from that sale back in 2004, and we have stewarded that chunk of change ever since. It's invested. The returns that we make off of that are what we make available for grants throughout our service area each and every year. And that looks like a whole bunch of different things that I will get into. This is our service area. You can see it's 75% of the province. So we have 137 communities that we serve throughout northern BC. Pouce-Coupe is part of what we call the Northeast region, or the province wrote into our act as the Northeast region. and of course has a seat that you're on for our Northeast Regional Advisory Committee. Northern Development, through its structure, is really tied to local government. So our board of directors is made up of 13 individuals. 8 of those 13 are local government officials. They come by way of the Regional Advisory Committee, which you yourself know. When your council appoints somebody to that Regional Advisory Committee, that individual is the voice for this community, but is also part of a larger leadership team at that table, stewarding how we prioritize and spend our dollars in that Northeast region. And then 2 people from each of those 4 regions are elected by their peers and form that majority within our board of directors. And in that way, Northern Development is truly led by the North and owned by the North, and not directed out of Victoria. So what can we do for you is kind of the big question. So Northern Development's primarily a funding agency. We joke inside our office we're the money fairies. So we're primarily the ones that can provide the dollars to help you realize and what your economic development priorities are. We are not the capacity that actually does the work for you. We are the ones that hold the programs that you apply to and then get those dollars to you for the projects that your community has prioritized. We have a broad view of economic development that it is not our job to tell each and every community what its economic development priorities are. That is up to the community. We have a broad set of programs that we think are flexible enough to serve communities of any size. And you can imagine with that service area, we're serving communities from Haida all the way here to Boos, and then all the way down to Lytton. Their needs are often very different and nuanced, but there's some common themes around challenges with capacity, challenges unlocking dollars, challenges with succession plans, challenges with simple things around community development and small business support. And that's typically where you'll see us play in. So we have 11 different funding programs for local government. We have capacity building programs that I'll talk a little bit about, community development programs. We do touch housing. And we are currently also delivering a fund for the province that actually is social service and healthcare funding for some of that. It's a little bit out of our core mandate, but want to make sure you're aware of it because there's probably some things that your community could access. I should note too, we don't just provide funding to local government. So our 4 primary applicants, I'd say, would be local government, Indigenous government, nonprofit, and small and medium. Yeah. So on the capacity building side, a couple of things that I'll feature right away that the village could take advantage of. So every year we can provide up to $8,000 for a grant writer in your community. So if that's a capacity constraint for your staff, just getting to writing the grants, because we know so many of our communities are reliant on grants, whether we like it or not, year to year to fund things, we can actually provide some funding that can help to pay a contractor to do some of that grant writing for you. And it's every year. It's not a one-time thing. Our goal there is to put some money in your pocket to get that individual to shake the money tree and get more dollars flowing in your community. And they can be used for anything. It's not just writing grants for Northern Development. In fact, we would prefer to see that individual be aware of our programs, but ideally applying to some of the bigger provincial and federal programs where you can get larger dollars rolling into your community.
I think if you don't mind.
Yeah.
There's also an opportunity to utilize that grant writing support to assist the not-for-profit organizations or businesses in the community that may also need assistance unlocking those dollars. So it doesn't have to be activities specifically, just with respect to the local government. It could be, to support the community as a whole as well.
Do you want to take active capacity building since we're on the same page?
Yeah, absolutely. So then the other capacity building program we have is our Economic Development Capacity Building Program. It is a financial incentive funding up to $50,000 to hire and maintain, either an economic development officer or position with that same economic development focus, or to pursue economic development activities. So something in the work plan or strategic goals over the course of the year that kind of fit driving forward those economic development activities, strategies, and goals that you may have. It's an annual allocation. The deadline was March 31st. We have funding set aside for all of the local governments within our region to be able to access that on an annual basis. Although the deadline is passed, I did take a quick peek. I don't believe we've seen anything from the village, but you know, we would still entertain a late application if there was an idea to perhaps either look at the application for either a wage or maybe some specific activities.
I have some questions about that, so it's perfect.
Now's the time.
Now's a good time.
Yeah. Before we go any further.
Yes, okay, perfect. So with the Economical Development Capacity Building Fund, I had actually been speaking with the Dawson Creek Chamber of Commerce, and they mentioned that to me before. And I think our confusion was within the writing. It appears that that $50,000 is to cover the initial, and then that job needs to turn into a permanent job funded by the municipality. Is the understanding correct in that? Or, because I think that was the biggest concern, is that we would be taking on another person and another wage. So how does that work? Is the person hired and then they work up to the $50,000 amount, or how does that work within that aspect?
Yeah, I can start and you can fill in if you want. So the funding is annual. So to maintain the role, it could come with that continuous funding year over year to help maintain that specific economic development role within village office. In the event that the dollars required in excess of $50,000, then that would be for the village to make up that difference. But it is annual funding that could be accessed to maintain the position that you were hired, so you've got some the ability to sustain that for the period of time.
Okay. And then I think my other concern with that, with it being a grant, you know, grants are never guaranteed. And so that was where a bit of that other concern was, is if we were to hire somebody as an economical development officer using that grant for the first year, there would then be that a bit concern of it being a grant and maybe not being able to access it or not being awarded that grant. Is this something where it's sort of not really like a guarantee, but it is something that you're already naturally setting aside for each municipality?
Do you want to take that?
Yeah, it's the latter. So we want you to have a grant or an EDO. That's why we created the position. So that $50,000. So we set aside $50,000 every year for every local government in our service area. So right now, what that means is that in the case of the village, it has been leaving that $50,000 on the table for the last 4 years because you haven't applied since 2019. Now, the one thing I will say that's a caveat is if that money is misused, then yeah, you're not going to be approved the next year. We have had issues with that in the past where local government has not effectively used the money and then they've reapplied in the next year and we said, sorry, until such time as you can demonstrate that you're actually doing economic development work, which frankly is not that difficult, we're not going to approve another application. That is a rare in the extreme. So we maintain that fund and our hope is that the village would be applying, and even if it's not all of it, even if it's just a portion of it in a given year to do some economic development planning or strategy work, whatever you might want to do, that's okay too, right? You don't need to take the full amount.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's no matching required for that either. That's just $50K. So you just apply for $50K. You don't need to bring any dollars to the table unless whatever you're planning to do costs more than $50K. Then you're on the hook for that.
Okay. Councillor Wall?
With the $8,000 for grant writing support there, does that need to be a specific position, or could that be tacked on to an already existing position or a multi-use role, and that $8,000 could help subsidize that wage?
I'm actually sorry, I'm just going to interject, just so you know, we did receive that $8,000 grant this year.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. So
We have a grant writer that we pay for that.
yeah, we've received the grant and we've been using it phenomenally with our nonprofits and our local region, and yeah, just so you.
So we already have that. Good.
We already have it, yeah.
Yeah, so it could be a contract grant writer, it could be a combined position. We just need to kind of look at what the role is, who it is, the percentage of the work, et cetera, to determine essentially eligibility.
Thank you.
Would you like me to proceed?
Yes.
Okay, so the other would be internships. So we also provide funding each year for a certain number of interns for local government and Indigenous government. We've been doing this for 10 years now on the local government side, and it's up to $35,000 towards salary for the host local government, and then there's also a housing stipend of $10,000 on top of that, because we recognize that a lot of the interns are having trouble finding housing in our communities, and sometimes it can be costly to land a person. This is really designed for succession planning in local governments. So we now see a number of CAOs throughout our service region who are former Northern Development interns. So they went to university, they graduated, they applied, they became an intern, they did a year, that turned into a permanent position either as an economic development officer or a corporate officer or a deputy CAO, and then within a few years, because of the turnover in a lot of our local governments, they had an opportunity to become a CAO in one of the communities. There's also a number of them now who are director level with larger municipalities or regional districts in other parts of BC. It's probably seen as one of the top two local government internship programs in Western Canada in terms of its success rate. It is specific to Northern BC. It's something to think about in the future. If you're thinking about you might need capacity, if your staff are interested in maybe mentoring somebody coming out of university, if you're thinking about succession planning, it can be quite a useful program to participate in. The one thing to keep in mind is there's only 8 local government positions a year. And typically what we try to do is spread that around the geography. So typically we're trying to find at least 2 placements in the Northeast, at least 2 in the Northwest, and 2 in the Cariboo, 2 in the Prince George. So if your staff that's something they're interested in, or you as a councillor are interested in, that's a conversation that's good to have with us. What do you think, spring, summer this year before a fall application? Or?
Yeah. Great conversations to start having with our intern program manager, Alana Surf, probably late summer, early fall. The host application deadline is early January, but the intake can open, I think it's November 1 is when she'll start taking the applications. But she can start having conversations with you around perhaps what some of the expectations are, some of the things to think about as you perhaps look towards what a work plan would look like, the mentorship would look like, and how you'd work through an internship within the village here. You'll see that it's up to 12 internships annually. We talked about there being 8 max for local government. The other 4 are an Indigenous government internship program. That's where we come to 12 total.
So community development. So probably what we're best known for is dollars that we put into actual physical spaces and infrastructure. What we're trying to achieve here is more attractive communities that attract and retain population and also generate revenue. So it is pure community development. There's sort of 3 key of the bigger programs I'll highlight here: cultural infrastructure, economic infrastructure, and recreation infrastructure. So on the cultural side, things like museums across the street, art galleries, studios, performing arts centers. On the rec side, we put funding in the past into the community around rink upgrades and other spaces, right? Those are things that can access some of those dollars. And then economic is more sort of airports, food security projects. I think the thing to highlight here is that you can get up to 70% of a project's budget to a maximum of $100,000 for upgrades and improvements, or even a new build on any of those types of projects. So they're quite broad. And then at a 50% maximum budget, you can get up to $300,000. So for a smaller community, it actually becomes quite meaningful dollars to see things move forward. There's sort of countless examples of communities that have accessed these programs, especially recreation infrastructure. Pretty well every recreation facility in Dawson Creek has accessed dollars through one of these 2 or 3 programs over time.
I have a question about that. Just first, before we go, we're most likely going to have to make a motion to extend the delegation past the 15 minutes, but I would like to recognize we have another delegation. Are you gentlemen okay if we extend this one? Thank you so much. I'd like to put the motion on the floor that we extend the Northern Development Initiative Trust delegation past the 15-minute mark. Can I get a seconder? Councillor Wall, thank you. All those in favor? Unanimous and carried. Thank you very much. My question to you is around your recreation infrastructure. Could this include grants that would support the development of purchasing like green spaces or purchasing spaces to create walking trails?
We have a trail program that's specifically, but we don't fund land purchase.
So one of the key considerations with our infrastructure programs is part of the qualifying criteria is that it creates either job opportunities or revenue related to the infrastructure. When we get, I believe in the next slide we can talk about some of the other programs we have, like our community places, where perhaps that may provide, or we won't, so I'll talk about it right now. So the infrastructure programs kind of have a little bit more of a lens where we're looking for some of that real economic development and growth associated with the investment in whatever the facility may be. But we have a community places program. It is a grant up to $30,000 where we can look at those amenities within a community that improve livability, access, etc., which could be like water parks, dog parks. So where something may not perhaps necessarily be a fit specifically within an infrastructure project, a conversation with our manager for this region, Anna Peasgood, may uncover that perhaps it's just a different program that may be a better fit.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
You're welcome.
Acknowledging that we're going over time and stealing from somebody else's thing, I'll try to truncate to the extent I can, and open to questions. So just a few other programs to highlight here. So we actually have a grant that's available for Main Street revitalization planning. Main Street doesn't have to be the Main Street, we just mean any downtown area. So if you ever find yourself in a position where as a council you're like, you know what, we actually want to do a master plan around revitalizing our downtown, this is a program to look at where you could actually get some dollars to help pay for the costs associated with that planning. Then once you've done that, you're going to need dollars to actually now do the infrastructure improvements. We're above ground, so we're never going to do water, sewer, or anything below. That's local government responsibility from Northern Development's perspective. But above ground stuff, streetscape improvements, lighting, signage, even street furniture, that's where Main Street revitalization capital can come in. The other one is the business facade improvement program. This is up to $20,000 a year. You can access it every year, where it's our money, so it flows through the local government, and then you run a local program and divvy out those dollars to your business owners, just to encourage them to revitalize some of their business frontages. It's been pretty successful in most every community around the north.
Councillor Wall?
Would that facade improvement program need to be a currently active business?
Yes and no. So depending on the business that's applying, in the event that they are anticipating or doing the improvement in preparation for opening, then you could look at that as being eligible. But it does need to be a successful business facade improvement project would need to be associated with a business that is either in operation or preparing to open the doors, because the hope and objective of that program is that it helps increase and drive traffic and dollars for the business.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Northern Housing Incentive. So this is dollars to the door, very much like the business facade improvement. This is money that comes from Northern Development to the local government. The local government then uses that money to actually incentivize housing development in the community. So in this case, what we're saying is we'll give you a maximum contribution of up to $200,000 to actually then provide developers with up to $10,000 per dwelling unit to build. So that money is really helping to just creating an incentive to get the developer to build in a smaller community where your costs are high because labor, materials, or location has made it less competitive than building in a smaller area. We're okay with that because our objective here is just simply to get units built. Chetwynd was just successful in accessing this program. They're using it to leverage and incentivize a development that's over 100 units. McBride has got one that's close to 30, and other communities like Williams Lake, Burns Lake, and Smithers have used it for sort of more and even like fourplexes, or in townhomes, row homes, that type of thing. So it can be one more tool that's sort of in the local government's toolbox, if you will, to try and attract market housing. I will stress this is market housing. We're trying to incentivize either seniors housing or housing that's going to attract and retain your sort of working age labor force. That's our sort of economic development lens on this. So social housing through this program is not the focus and is not eligible. In this program, oh, it is. So this program is the one that I mentioned earlier we deliver on behalf of the province. This is for any community that is indirectly impacted by the development of the gas sector. So you're in, obviously. So it's really designed to help the community adjust to the growth that they will experience when there is a significant investment in that sector. There's capacity dollars and there's a capital side of the program, and there's eligible categories. But really what this is, there's not an economic development lens primarily here, there's a social development lens primarily. So this can actually provide dollars for everything from the delivery of mental health services and support to healthcare services and support, counseling. It can do emergency services. It can provide support for even small business retention and expansion programs, workforce training programs. And on the capital side, it'll actually provide up to $500,000 to build things like childcare spaces, housing, could be social housing, wraparound services that go with that. On the capacity side, it's actually up to 3-year funding, and it's got a really high leveraging rate on both. So we'll actually provide up to 90% of a project's budget to a maximum of $300,000 a year, which is $100,000 a year on the capacity side. We're seeing a lot of nonprofits access this program. It also is money for local government capacity. So let's say you're really strapped for local government capacity because of all the growth that's going on in the community because of industrial development. You need more staff positions. So we've seen Terrace use this now for community safety officers, for planning positions, anything that local government might need some money for the next few years to staff up and address its workload that's associated or is an indirect result of that industrial development. We saw Fraser Lake use it to buy a new fire engine. We've seen some really cool things through this. The one thing I'll note is this is a spend down fund, so it's very different than everything else we do. This was a $24 million fund. It will last until probably the end of 2025 is when it will be fully exhausted. There's about 12 million left in the fund now. So there's a couple years there. It's got quarterly intakes, and it's very flexible. So I'll end with this one just by saying, whether it's the local government or nonprofits in the community that you're hearing about that might need access to funding to expand their service delivery, this might be a really good fit because it's very, very broad, and it is designed to help communities adjust. And that is it. So we're happy to take any questions before we depart.
Councillor Rabble?
So I have 2 questions. So what does the funnel look like between businesses or nonprofits, the municipality, and NDIT? Is it kind of they must come through the municipality and then we approach NDIT?
Do you want to take first stab at that?
Sure. So if we think about, let's look at the not-for-profits that may be accessing community development program or the community development programs for funding. They're still the applicant. The applicant to Northern Development for funding is whoever is either project lead or owns the asset or infrastructure. But we do have a requirement for resolutions of support from the local government that help us determine and understand what community priorities have been set and that there's support around that particular activity. As part of our assessment, we take that, and it's also what informs the regional advisory committees when they're looking at those. Businesses are different, and we didn't touch on the business program specifically as part of this presentation, but they come direct to Northern Development to access business development programs where projects may align. And that process is really incredibly different. It's done on a continuous intake. We do the assessment with a delegated authority through Joel, so we can kind of work at the pace of business and support them that way. So the eligible applicant is essentially who comes direct, but we do look for those resolutions of support to see the community has prioritized what they're proposing to do with regional development funds.
Councillor Rebel?
And just an extension on it, so my understanding, if it's correct, would be that the municipality goes to NDIT for municipal specific operational and capital things that regard the municipality, but then this business or nonprofit kind of goes around to NDIT directly, and then municipality gets involved saying, hey, that's fantastic, let's do it. So I appreciate that, if I understand it correctly. So then the next piece would be, can we apply for everything and not say you get this and this, or this and this? It's kind of a and situation, or is it an or situation?
It's an and situation. The one thing we will say, like we had in the Northern Healthy Community Fund, which is the last program I highlighted there, we had one municipality recently, Terrace, apply to us, and they applied for about $2.5 million, and I think it was about 12 projects just through that one fund. Wow. They were approved for about 1.8, but one of the questions we did ask when we went through that, just because of the bevy of projects they had, was, okay, now demonstrate to us how you have the capacity to execute on all of the things that you just asked money for. Mm-hmm. So there was an extra level of due diligence that when we started to see that sudden rise. There is a reality check in all of this, right? There's a lot of programs here, and it's potentially really exciting if you start moving really proactively down the economic development spectrum, but we also acknowledge staff are limited. That's why we put in the capacity programs too, right? Is to try and make sure that staff aren't killed by this on the community side. So it's an and position. It's what we do see a lot every year. Most local governments will definitely be applying for grant writer and active capacity building. That's just what they're already doing. And then usually we'll see from most local governments throughout the north a couple of the community development applications through the year that might be like a trail build or a playground or a recreation infrastructure upgrade. And then we'll see a couple nonprofits too. So there's definitely an and situation in there. Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else? Councillor Wong?
I want to thank you for coming all the way up here, and I know it's been a while since we met at the Natural Resource Forum, but following through on that, I very much appreciate it. I want to thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're most welcome. It was when we had the chat, it was just an opportunity to get back in the community, and it's worth the drive. We're happy to come up anytime and see how we can support you. None of this stuff, the last thing I'll say is, none of this stuff is overnight. Northern development isn't going anywhere, so just, patience, take your time, and when you're ready to access one or many of these programs, we're going to be there, and we'd be happy to come back up and work with your team to provide support on how to apply for those things, but then also celebrate and cut ribbons when things get built.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Yes.
Thank you. Very much appreciated.
Thank you. Alrighty. So, 6.2 recommendations.
That council hears the delegation from the Dawson Creek Disc Golf Club.
Perfect. Alrighty. Can I get a seconder?
Oh.
Councillor Wall, thank you. Don't worry, me too. Thank goodness for our intern CAO. She's been saving my butt all night. Hello, gentlemen.
Hello.
Thank you so much for coming out and seeing us. We haven't seen you guys since the winter now, so hopefully you guys had a...
Yeah, it definitely is finally starting to melt a little bit more out there.
The grass is showing.
It is.
I know, very exciting.
Honestly, you guys really need to do something with the sun and get it directed a little bit more on the course because it's still a little white and we'd like to see a little bit more green.
I can imagine. Me and you both. Alrighty.
Well, thanks for having us. That was very educational. I also have applied or been in the process of applying for NDIT grants, and so it was very interesting to hear them educate us.
That's wonderful that you were sort of able to get something out of that.
We've explored the community spaces, and so that was very helpful. So, anyways, my name is David Radigan. I'm the president of our Dawson Creek Disc Golf Club, and this is Ron Freeman. He's a fellow board member, sits on the board for the last couple of years. We came to you guys last year regarding our disc golf ventures in the park there, and we wanted to follow up on that. So just a brief history. In 2018, we got temporary baskets through a different grant through Northern Health, and we're able to put them into the park. It was meant to be a temporary thing, And just due to various reasons that ended up being more permanent, COVID hit and we didn't really extend any agreement with the village until last year, which you guys gave us approval to keep them there. And so we wanted to follow up. Also last year we asked if we could host a tournament, and so I wanted to just bring a brief report. So these are statistics for 2022. We had over 265 recorded rounds using this application called UDisc, which they estimate that there's often 5 times more actual rounds played, which I think is the case because we also, as you can see, we hosted a tournament. It was super successful. We had people travel from Grand Prairie, staying the night in Dawson Creek because they came to practice before, and so there was, you know, a little bit of tourism there. People came down from Fort St. John as well and up from Tumbler Ridge. So within the Peace region, we had a good representation of competitive players. And for the course that we had, it was full. Like 30 to 40 people would have been fully full, but 26 was busy. And so we played 2 rounds. It was super successful, and yeah, thanks for letting us do that. Also, we hosted league nights. Our Dawson Creek Disc Golf Club does league nights on Monday nights throughout the summer. Well, as much as we can from like May till October. And we hosted almost every other week. We'd be in Poos for, you know, a Monday night event or sometimes on the weekend. And so yeah, lots of club members were out there and lots of recreation hours on the course. So just wanted to let you guys know that we are using it to the full and hope to maybe use it some more. So if you look at the next page, this is the original layout. Their disc golf plays similar to golf, where you have a tee pad or a tee area, and then you have a basket or a hole that you're playing to. All of our tee pads are just in the grass there. If you go to other places like Grand Prairie or Fort St. John, tee pads typically are concrete or like a rubber pad or a turf material. And so eventually our hope is to maybe move towards that. As it stands still, we just have the 9 baskets there, but we did design a tournament layout. I didn't include it, but there also is an 18-hole layout where you can tee from 2 different areas to the same basket, so you kind of play the circuit twice. Most people play that because it's more natural.
Whenever we have our tournament, or not a tournament, like our league nights, we always do the 18-hole layout, and we have actually designed that we've moved tee pads. So it's not like you're playing the same baskets, but it's not playing the same hole, because the moving of the tee pad actually makes it like it's a brand new layout.
Oh, cool.
So we do the 18. So we have utilized what space we have. We have utilized that.
Yeah. So for the tournament, I included that graphic. It looks a little chaotic, but it's because we tried to cram as much as we possibly could into the space. Disc golf is super fun, it's very accessible, but one of the main things that we try to do is make sure it's safe. And so that's something that's in our front of mind if we are able to continue using the space, is to try to redesign or have a design that's as functional but also safe at the same time. So for the tournament, we added 3 baskets to try to reduce the congestion, to have more flow, but there's some areas of the park that we maybe could explore. So moving on to the next flipping of the page, I did a little bit of digging to find out sort of where the property lines are, and I've actually walked several times with some of the club members. There's a few trails back there. It used to be a campsite, I believe. I'm not sure if there was campsites in that little area back there, but in the wooded trees area, we'd like to explore to see if we could potentially put more holes there and eventually grow the course to a full 18, if that's something that the village is interested in. Or there's sort of 2 options, or you could have 9 holes, 9 really good holes, and then have 2 tee pads for each hole that are more permanent, and install them and have signage. We're currently in the process of working on doing that in Dawson Creek. We revitalized the park space that we had there, and have got some grant support to put that in. So that's one of our 2023 goals, is to finish the Dawson Creek course, and then we kind of have our eyes on Poos and wanted to keep in communication with you guys. So yeah, I guess moving to the last official slide. Yeah, we're looking to make what was a temporary disc golf course, like as it is, the baskets are on temporary stands so they can be moved around. Typically, they would be concreted into the ground to avoid being stolen, and that's just generally what happens. As it is, we put eco spikes, and then some of them are locked to the eco spikes so people don't steal them. In the 4 years they've been there, there's been no theft, which we're super grateful for. There's been a little bit of vandalism in the park, not disc golf related, but ATVs and whatnot. And so we were a bit nervous that maybe somebody might run them over or whatnot. But it hasn't happened yet, which is good. But I think over the last 4 years, we've had thousands of rounds played there. Like on UDisc, we have the stats from the years, and it's like people from all over. Like it shows player profiles, people driving up from Yukon or to Alaska will stop here. When disc golfers go on trips, they check their phone to see, oh, where are the areas that are good to play? And Poos is actually higher rated than Dawson because it's a more challenging layout. So more people end up stopping in Poos right now than Dawson Creek because they go, oh, that's rated higher.
Nice.
So it's not massive in the scheme of things, not to oversell it, but it's big enough that with the growth of disc golf, it grew almost 100% during the pandemic because people wanted to get outside and do something. And it still is growing, so we feel like it's something that we're passionate about, that we feel like serves the community. It's very accessible for people in our area to get involved in, and something that we're looking to continue here. We're not asking for any funding from the village. If we had letters of support, we could then go to NDIT or other grants and essentially get fundraising done. Some of the tricky part for us was raising enough capital because you need to be able to bring part of the capital, but we're in a little bit better position as a club to be able to do that. And yeah, I guess in addition to that, to sneak in an extra ask, we're hoping to host another Poos Cup tournament on June the 17th. It's a Saturday. It would be similar to last year where we play 2 rounds, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, and use the park. But,
with that, as well as last year, the people that did come out, yeah, they stayed in Dawson Creek, but everybody at the break between the rounds went to the store and got food. Unfortunately, the pizza place wasn't open. They were closed.
they were in a transition
They were in a transition place
Yeah.
from changing from what they were to Love and Pizza.
Yeah.
So they weren't open, and we were, like, a lot of people were really hoping that they were, because we were actually going to approach the pizza place and go, hey, we have a tournament going on.
Yeah.
Can you guys do pizza?
Yeah.
Like a little bit earlier, so then at least the people can come in and get it. But everybody went and utilized the store. And because at the time that was the only place for food. So our goal and our ask of the players when they come to the tournament is please utilize the village for purchasing. You need fuel, go to the ESSO.
Mm-hmm.
If you need food, go there. Now that Love and Pizza seems to have a little bit more stability going on, it might work out really well.
Yeah, we're also like not official, but for tournaments we try to have a players pack, and I've reached out to some local potters, which my wife is part of, to create pottery for the Poos Cup because she actually made the trophies last year. And so there's a local potter, Dory Braun, that my wife works with, and so that's kind of in the works as well. So there is some economic, I mean, again, it's not huge in the scheme of things, to not oversell it, but yeah, typically when we do a tournament, we'd reach out to local businesses. Like I did reach out to Don's Pizza, but because he was in the transition. But you might go, hey, we're hosting a tournament. Would you like to give us like a coupon or something, and we can include in the players pack, and then help.
There's a local potter in Poos Koopy too, actually.
Yes.
Yeah, so I don't know if you've heard of her, Karina Bunker, yeah.
Yeah, I'm familiar with her too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of it. If there's any questions, we're happy to answer them.
Well, in one of the other ways that we could also be supportive is if you guys are willing to sort of come up with like a small advertisement about your tournaments or your Monday night meetups, we could actually, if you bring that forward to council and council votes approvingly on it, we could actually put that in our Village Voice as well, which goes out. We try to do once every month, but it's about once every 2 months or so. But it would at least be once throughout the summer, and then that could be another way to sort of advertise that, you know, this is happening within our
That would be great.
community too. Yeah.
Yes.
So if you just want to draw something up and
Sure,
send
certainly.
it our way, we can add
Certainly.
it to our agenda. We would love to get it out there and, you know, show continued support and stuff as well.
Yeah, because we definitely appreciate the fact that we have Poos, because Poos is a great little place to come to play. I work in Poos. I'm BC government, but I work in Poos. I work at the scale.
Oh, yeah.
So we are located here in Poos. I was with Poos Fire for 5 years. So this little village that I came to grow to love has still been in there in some form of way. So the fact that we have our course here has been amazing. And to be able to have, and the nice thing is we have been able to go to Dawson play around, go to Poos play around in the same day, and it works. I ran into two guys that came up from Florida, and they were hitting disc golf. They were on bikes. They were going to Alaska, like not pedal bikes, like motorbikes, and they were going to Alaska, and they were hitting every disc golf course on their way. And I ran into them at our course in Dawson, and they just finished playing Poos. And their biggest thing was they wished the layout was just a little bit more easier to read than, because we don't have signage up. So if you don't know it, and with UDisc, it's a GPS. So you can look at it, and you can have it on your phone, and they were using UDisc, and they're kind of walking around and go, oh, okay, there's a mark there in the ground. Okay, that must be the tee. And that was their only complaint, but they absolutely loved Poos. And of all the courses that they played, that was their top that they really enjoyed.
It is nice to still see something that is going on down at the park, of course, with the flooding. Insurance is not willing to have us add in buildings and stuff, right? Due to it being sort of in that danger of flooding zone, and so it is nice.
Well, and that's the thing too, is with disc golf, if it does flood, the baskets are there. They're not gonna just blow.
If they're concrete down, they'll stay unless trees wipe them out. But
and there's not very much trees in there that are pretty much ready to be deadfall still. Cleaned out a lot, but it's just a good opportunity.
Councillor Rebel?
So I have 2 questions. Ownership of the baskets and pads once they become permanent. Who's paying for them? Just being blunt here, sorry.
No, definitely.
And then liability coverage.
So we carry $5 million liability, and I can email that to Sandy. Miss Stokes. We are covered through BC Disc Sports, and so it's Ultimate Frisbee and disc golf. And so I can forward that. We got our COI renewed again. Regarding the ownership, right now the club owns those baskets technically. The agreement that we had with the city of Dawson Creek was like a 5-year lease where I believe because it's city land, they own the infrastructure technically, but we committed to maintaining the infrastructure, where the stuff we have in Dawson Creek, we bought it used and it was needing to be replaced essentially and upgraded, so that's why we had worked on that. Depending on how things go with Poos, I don't think our board would be opposed to a similar agreement where the village would technically own the equipment, but we would commit to maintaining it. And certainly if we wrote for a grant, we would try to arrange putting it into the ground, but as far as ownership of the actual equipment, it seems a little silly for you guys to own the land and then not the recreation equipment. Like I would assume that you own the park equipment that's there, and the pavilion structure and all that stuff. So it's sort of like I don't know. I'd have to bring it to the board, but off the top of my head, I would say that we could draw something up.
Okay. Any other questions? No. All righty. Well, thank you so much for coming out. Thank you for maintaining the communication. I absolutely appreciate seeing you guys every single time, so it's absolutely wonderful. Just to note, we are looking at having Canada Day this year up at the school, and I know there has been talks, it has not been confirmed yet, of having a baseball tournament at the same time. So maybe if Disc Golf is interested in sort of riding on the back of that as well, that might also be another really great.
We did come down last year.
Yes.
We did set up at the park last year.
Yeah.
There is a major tournament in Edmonton that I will most likely be at. My sponsor is out of Kamloops, so I'm sponsored through a disc golf company.
Okay, yeah.
And my sponsor has said, hey, Canada Day, you need to be in Edmonton.
Yeah.
And so I said to my wife, I'm like, hey, so I need to be in Edmonton. And she looked at me and went, we'll see.
Yeah.
So,
Gotcha.
with that being said, if I'm here, I will gladly jump in.
Yeah.
But I
Might be something to
definitely,
think about. I know Iron Wolf is thinking of doing the same thing with baseball, so.
Okay.
yeah, I think that it would be good. I think last year, because it was so new to the village seeing it,
Yes.
we did draw a lot of people. A lot of people didn't know what it was, but I was surprised in how many people actually knew what disc golf is.
Yeah.
And it is a very fast growing sport, and it's a game that anybody can play. Like it, of all ages, does not matter if you are old, young, athletic, not athletic, you can play the game, and it's just a good way to get out. So hopefully it helps grow.
Well, on your way out the door, we do have agendas on the table that will have the slideshow that NDIT just did. So if you'd like to take a copy so you can learn a little bit more about what they just presented, they are free to the public. You're more than welcome to grab one. And she saved you the PowerPoint.
Yeah, if you email it to me, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Stokes.
There you go. They are on it.
Yes, thank you guys so much.
Yeah,
Thank you
thank
very
you.
much.
Have
Thank
a
you.
wonderful
Appreciate it.
evening.
Thank
We'll
you.
see you guys next time. Okay. Alrighty, so now as our delegation period is finished, looking back at the delegation we've just had with the disc golf, Dawson Creek Disc Golf Club, I would like to put a motion on the floor that staff draft a letter of support for the club from the village of Pooscopee. Can I get a seconder? Councillor Johnston, discussion? Councillor Rabble?
So the letter of support would be regarding their use of Poos Park to transition from temporary to permanent, and then also to host a tournament?
Yes.
Or are we just talking tournament right
Well,
now?
Ms. Stokes is nodding her head no. So my understanding is that the letter of support would just be to support them in their capacity currently.
The letter of support is so they can continue to apply for grants
Yes.
for funding in hopes of council making a decision to let them go more permanent down there.
Okay? All those in favor? Unanimous and carried. Thank you very much. And with the hosting of the tournament, now they held this tournament last year, Ms. Stokes. Is it my understanding he's not asking for the permanent structures at this point, he's just asking for the
He's just
tournament?
asking to host the tournament like he did last year.
Okay, I'd like to put a motion on the floor that we allow the Dawson Creek Disc Golf Club to host their annual Poos Cup tournament on June 17th, 2023. Can I get a seconder? Councillor Rattle, thank you. Discussion? None? All those in favor? Unanimous and carried. And lastly, I would like to put a motion on the floor that staff begin talking with the Dawson Creek Disc Golf Club about some of this permanent structure stuff. At this point in time, I'd like to learn a little bit more about this, especially with the idea of them receiving grants and stuff. So I would like to put a motion on the floor that staff begin conversations with the Dawson Creek Disc Golf Club. Can I get a seconder? Councillor Johnson, thank you. Discussion? None? All those in favor? Unanimous and carried. Thank you very much. Councillor Wall,
I have two motions to make,
in regards to,
the delegations.
okay,
First motion would be that staff look into the $50,000 Economic Development Officer grant through NDIT as
was presented.
As was presented, Mr. McKay there was quite, it seemed as though even though we're late, it could still be looked at.
Okay, all right, can I get a seconder? Councillor Rabble, discussion? Councillor Rabble?
Would this be, so from my understanding, this is to look into the potential of hiring an economic development officer, funding up to $50,000, however, costs over $50,000 would be borne by the municipality. However, I see it as an absolute necessity to have encourage economic development within the village, keeping our jobs local for the people who are local here and who may come through. But anyway, I'll leave it there.
Ms. Stokes?
In the past, this grant has been applied for and we've used it to hire Urban Systems to do ECDEV development for us. We haven't actually hired it. We use consultant.
Oh, so we just contract out to Urban Systems?
When they used to apply for this, that's who used to do it, was
Yeah.
Urban Systems.
Oh, okay, gotcha. All right. And what, the motion on the floor by Councillor Wall is just have staff begin looking into it, hey?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, and then that was seconded by Councillor Rabble. So any other discussion? All right, all those in favor? Unanimous and carried, thank you very much. You had two?
I had two. The second one is actually regarding Poos Park. I'd like to put a motion on the floor that staff look into possible alcohol permitting in Poos Park during events.
Ms. Stokes?
That's as council, as it's brought forward to council.
Well, that's not-
You can't give them an open invitation to have alcohol down there. It's a risk.
Oh, I understand. I'm just thinking because the park technically isn't in Poos, could be.
Yeah, well,
It
what,
would be, it'd be looking at the alcohol permits through the district for
So they-
public
if-
events.
Yes, let's look into that.
okay, can I,
speaking.
can I get a seconder for that motion? Okay, seconded by Councillor Rabble, sorry about that. I got brains this evening, okay. Yeah, as I said, I think my understanding is it's like a as you come in basis, but we can look in and
We'll look into it.
we'll look into it, okay. All those in favor? Unanimous and carried, thank you, Mrs. Stokes. Okay, moving on. Unfinished business and business arising from the minutes, there is none. Item number 8, new business, 8.1 recommendation.
That council approves posting Poultry House advertising within the village.
Wonderful. Can I get a seconder? Councillor Johnston, thank you. Did you almost second your own motion? He was like, he moved, and I was like, he's about to second that.
But I did not.
Alrighty, so, this all started, the program director of the Poultry's House reached out to me last week and asked if we as a local municipality could help get the word out about this amazing new service within our, area. She gave me a beautiful blurb, so I'm gonna read it, because it really sort of explains everything. So, the information that was provided to me is that this facility will house individuals traveling to Dawson Creek for medical treatment and care. It's a 6-bedroom, 5-bathroom, wheelchair-accessible home with a shared kitchen and eating area, 2 lounge areas, shared laundry. Housekeeping services are provided, and they are committed to the highest levels of cleanliness. Poultry's House can accommodate short-term and long-term stays with special attention to the unique needs of the care of each house guest. So quite a few of us attended the opening of the Poultry's House. So when she reached out to me about us helping them advertise, I thought that was absolutely fantastic. So hence how it ended up on the agenda. Any discussion? Oh, it's a race to the finish. Councillor Wall.
I'm curious if we could add this one-page advertisement into our next Village Voice, because I feel a lot of people that would be using these services would be more so having family members come from away. It's not necessarily for our local people to use,
Yeah.
but that word of mouth I think would be very important.
The next Village Voice may be almost complete. Not 100% sure. I've seen it, yes. I just saw it, like literally on Monday.
The next,
I can ask.
She can.
I can ask if she can fit something in.
And Councillor Ramble.
I congratulate all the community support in making this a reality, from local municipal governments, regional governments, nonprofits, anywho. But what I would suggest is not only the printed advertisement, but on social media as well, to constantly kind of put this message out every so often, to basically build that understanding in the populace that this is a facility that is now open, and it is an answer to a problem. I've heard of numerous people, locally and otherwise, who need to come from far and remote areas, and the cost of accommodation is extraordinary. However, hotels in the area have been accommodating in the past. However, this is that kind of answer to that.
My understanding with the advertising within the village, this covers our social media, our website, and paper, like Village Voice. Is that? Yes. Okay. Alrighty. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous and carried. Thank you very much. Alrighty, 8.2 recommendation. We'll flip up at once. That council receives this report for information and discussion, and that council decides if the Dare to Dream Society should take over the planning and hosting of Canada Day. I'm going to say that and that for after, say it all at once. Okay? And that council decides how much they would like to donate as a grant to the Dare to Dream Society to host this event. Can I get a second? Councillor Johnston, thank you. And discussion. Councillor Wall.
Will they be applying for grants for, like, my concerns are ball tournament, which is their own ball tournament. We've agreed to allow them to do it on Canada Day. However, it's not our tournament to be funding, in my personal opinion, which is a concern there. And the fact that in our little report here, there's no grant application process, it shows that they're just going to use 100% our funds, which is a concern there. I'm not totally comfortable just kind of handing it away as is, especially, just a heads up, that I did receive interest today from the Chamber of Commerce in hosting for Canada Day. So I don't know if we did a whole diligent process there, but of reaching out to other organizations, but there is other interest in the community.
I definitely share some of your concerns. As you all know, I did sort of send a big email out with the majority of my concerns, specifically around the $6,500 cost for the bouncy castle and amusements. I was a bit concerned about, I was unclear because it had talked about bouncy castles and amusements, and then it had sort of gone into amusements for another $6,500. So that, I found that a little bit confusing, as well as the $3,000 cost for the ball tournament as well. And then the cost for the porta potties, garbage bins, and generators, as we have had them donated in the past. During our meeting with Dare to Dream, we did give him all the contact information for all of the donors and sponsors we've had previously, and who have donated like porta potties, generators, and those types of things. My hope is that he will reach out to them. I don't know if there's a concern because it's so late in the year, but I do definitely share your concerns that you are bringing forward, yes. Councillor Rattle.
I'd like to make a motion. I know that's inside of the motion, but I'd like to make a motion to move in camera under section 91K, negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of municipal service that are in their preliminary stages, and that in the view of council could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they're held in public.
Okay, can I get a seconder on the motion?
You have to wait till the next meeting, you can't just do a surprise in-camera meeting.
I'm not sure if we could just move into in-camera or if we have to wait. I'd like to call a short break while we actually look into this. So I'm going to call a short 5-minute break, and we're going to look into this. Okay? Thank you. Can I get a seconder on the break? All those in favor? Unanimous and carried. Thank you.